Warm welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Learning Podcast, and excited to have BVS Prathap, my batchmate at Puttaparthi, in this particular podcast. Saram, BVS, how are you?
Sairam, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, all good, BVS. So, BVS, as discussed previously, we'll actually look at three themes for this particular podcast. Uh, we'll be looking at learning, leadership, and cultural identity, and the themes that we have agreed are number one, heritage and legacy, number two, cultural values in everyday life, and number three, role of education in preserving and evolving culture. So, as Parthi students, I guess, Swami, as you actually heard thousands of discourses of Bhagwan, so I think you are ideal with respect to answering these questions previous. So, before I go ahead and give a short introduction, any intro words, welcome words you want to say, previous?
Thank you for actually inviting me here. I'm really happy, just to be here. The topics will take some time to discuss, but let's keep it so short and sweet for today.
So, BVS, thank you. So, BVS Prathap is a risk management consultant with an MBA, FRM, CIA, and fintech enthusiast. So, he's a fintech enthusiast with 26 years of diverse industry and geographical experience. He worked with Citibank as ORM head for Bahrain and Qatar and complaints lead for MENA. Worked with ICICI India and currently owns his own consulting firm. Now, as a consultant, he works with banks, NBFCs, insurance companies, fintechs, telecom, retail chains in the areas of governance, risk, and compliance. So that's, in short, BVS for you. So BVS, let's kick off this particular podcast with the first theme on heritage and legacy, the foundations that shape us. So the questions are around how do you see the role of storytelling and oral traditions in preserving cultural heritage? That's number one. And in today's fast-paced world, how can we maintain a balance between preserving traditions and embracing modernity beliefs?
Thanks, Ravi. It's an interesting question. Before I answer the first question, I want to actually say, why do we even need to preserve cultural heritage? If you look at corporates nowadays, they want to preserve a certain culture. Say, for example, risk management culture. They want to have, everybody should have the risk management culture. They want to preserve it because they want to pass down the lessons we learned. That's exactly what societies do. So our forefathers have learned over a period of time by doing mistakes. Like, we do something, it didn't work. We did something unethical. We did something without integrity, it didn't work. So that's how the society learns how to be having the moral values, ethical values, etc. Right? How do you pass them forward? So one of the best ways is, of course, storytelling. That's the reason even corporates nowadays are adopting that. If you, there are some books around this. A lot of people who actually do their entire career is about storytelling. If you look at LinkedIn, there you'll find some guys on only doing storytelling. The concept is that is the best way to pass on whatever is learned in the past, right? That's how. So basically, that not only lessons learned, it also lets us pass down the core values of society, core values of a corporate. So it's the same thing, right? Also, it reinforces the behaviors. It keeps, if we tell somebody like, this happened in the past, he did this and he achieved something. So what does that do to the person who's listening? The person who's listening is influenced, he's inspired by that. And then that reinforces that, this is a good thing to do. So that's how the stories influence everybody. So looking at our own, culture, just imagine, like, go back to my own childhood. I came up listening, I was brought up listening Satya Harishchandra story, for example, which is about truth. Shivi Chakravarti story, which is about charity, self-sacrifice for others. Heard of Karna, again, charity. So a lot of these stories actually, as a child itself, puts beliefs actually that reinforces the beliefs in us that these moral values are good. Indian story is not just about ethics, but there are also like things about entertainment. Actually, there are stories about Vikram Betal. There are stories about Vikramaditya, which a lot of people think Vikram Betal is the only part of the whole story, right? Actually, Vikramaditya stories is much larger, like maybe 300 times the Vikram Betal story. And then there is one Kada Sarit Sagara, which is a bunch of stories, which looks like it's entertainment, but actually it's not just entertainment. It actually brings out what are the core values of India. So which I'll come to little later. But then those core values is what it brings up in the whole stories. So that's one thing. Also, we had, by the way, just one thing I just remembered something about Ace of Fables. Ace of Fables are actually from where? They are from basically based on Indian Panchatantra. So that's a very interesting thing to note. Like the moral stories of the West are basically based on the moral stories of India. But unfortunately, we don't learn it nowadays. Nowadays, the storytelling is reduced, right? So that's one thing. On the oral tradition side, again, a lot of things like what we learn from our parents, what our grandparents tell us stories like. I'll just give an example. My father told me this as a kid, right? In our village, we're from agricultural society. Everybody depends on agriculture. So there is a canal, which is irrigation canal, which comes to which gives water to the fields. But obviously, every year it gets silted. So who removes the silt? It's not the village society. It's not the government. It's the individuals. So every house, small or big, they send one person with one tool. Doesn't matter what big tool, what size of the tool, it just depends on their ability. That's it. They go together, few kilometers, like 6 kilometers of the entire canal is desilted every year once. So this is a social cause, right? So when I listen to this, what do I learn? I learn that society lives for each other. It's actually benefit of society. But nobody's asking questions like, why is government not doing this? Why is village society not doing this? Why is somebody else not doing this? There's no blame on others. Everybody's doing their responsibility for society, right? So if I learn these kind of things during oral tradition, that puts me on a strong hold. So that brings me to the next question, right? How does that influence my leadership today? Okay. So if I look at how I see people around me, it's not always me first. It's not like, okay, I want to achieve something in my team. I want to achieve something in the company. What happens now is because of my background and this kind of oral tradition, storytelling, what I learned, I will put others first. I'll put the team first. I'll put the company first. So the company, if anything is going against company, that is something which I will not tolerate, right? So ethics is something else. Ethics automatically comes because of this. But first thing is what preserves the company's long-term value. Its second thing is ethics and all those things, right? So that's how it comes. So how does this come? This comes from the oral traditions, both from the company and from personal values. That's what I would think.
Viewers,
okay.
Yeah, I want to tickle something else also, right? Your father's story is making me ask the question. So with that kind of a background where people actually come together and serve the society at large. And I know, and many of the Parthi batchmates actually know that you played a significant role with respect to maintenance, both in Vrindavan and Parthi, right? Can you give a bit of a brief? And I heard one thing where I think you got a shock on the top of the pole and fell down or something like that. Something happened. What happened?
Oh, okay. Just to give a little bit of background on that for listeners who probably are not from Puttaparthi. Students used to run the entire hostel themselves. So some students used to take care of the dispensary, some students used to take care of the library, some students used to take care of the maintenance work, which is like electrical, carpentry, plumbing, and all that. That again brings us the self-reliance in us, and also the fact that we can contribute to society in a small way, however small it is. Yeah, I was in all of this, by the way. I was in a library in 1 year, I was in dispensary 1 year, maintenance 3 years, and all that. Shocks is common. Shocks are very common. They do happen sometimes because we're little just not thinking. But what happens? Why are we even working on live wires? Sometimes what happens is the entire hostel is studying. They are in the evening hours. Next day is exam. You can't switch off the power and work. And you will have to work on live wire. So what we used to do is we used to take care sometimes, wear some rubber slippers, stand on other rubber slippers, or some gloves were too difficult. Gloves were too tight to wear, right? So we used to work with bare hands. So there are 2-3 times when it happened. Like, once I was just using the I remember that very well, the screwdriver and a tester kind of thing, but it was not insulated. So by mistake, I just touched the non-insulated part while doing this one. So it just, luckily, God's grace, just slipped out of my hand, right? So it happened quite a few times. But that's just that just, the whole inspiration behind is not, nothing to worry about it. All we are worried about is how do you make sure the students don't have trouble and they have to finish their studies. And this is important because one particular room was not having power, and we need to give them, otherwise they will not be able to study.
Yeah.
That's how we work, right? So yeah, going back to this, the core value, that's what
Sure.
made us do that.
Absolutely. So moving on, I think we're looking at cultural values in everyday life and living what we believe, BBS. So what role do cultural values play in leadership, decision making, and ethical behavior? And how can families and communities ensure that younger generations stay connected to their cultural roots, BBS?
Ravi, sorry about a break here. I think I didn't answer the second question. I skipped it.
Go ahead. I'll cut it off. Go ahead.
Okay. So we were talking about actually in today's fast world, how can we maintain balance between preserving traditions and embracing modernity, right?
Yes.
I wanted to actually ask a question. What do we mean by modernity? Often we think modernity is what? Wearing modern dress or listening to modern music. But the fact, if you look at this, just to give an example, okay? Sambar is traditional food, right? But sambar was born only like 200 years back. Before that, there was no sambar in Tamil Nadu. Entire Tamil Nadu now depends on sambar. So it is traditional, but it was not traditional 200 years back. 200 years back. Let's look at pav bhaji. Pav bhaji is the traditional food in Bombay, but pav bhaji did not exist. Forget, the potato did not exist few years back, right? So the tradition changes. Tradition adopts. Okay, let's take a food aside. Let's take other example. Let's take Ganesh Chaturthi. Just 100 years back, Ganesh Chaturthi was not a procession. It was just private festival which all of us celebrated home. It is Balagangadhar who brought it out into the streets because he wanted to inspire and also get people together for independence movement. That's a totally different story. But that made us like now we get inspired just by the procession of Ganesha now. That's like totally like inspirational thing. But it wasn't there 100 years back. So what is tradition? Tradition is what we build, right? It keeps changing. So tradition is not like, we have to hold on to something. We have to say this is the only right thing. That's not tradition. Why? So let me give 2 more examples. Let's take violin. Violin is the key part of the Carnatic music today, but it didn't exist 150 years back, maybe around that. That's when it came in. Before that, it was just purely Western instrument. Now let's take, say, Salwar kameez. When do you think Salwar kameez actually started coming into India? Like, maybe 13th century. Before that, there was no salwar kameez. Everybody was wearing saris and dhotis and, unstitched clothes or, unbuttoned clothes or variety. Different kind of buttons were there. That's a different story. But yeah, the whole thing was how it was there, right? So we keep adapting and progressing. So there's nothing like modernity, in my opinion. So there's nothing like maintaining what we call or embracing modernity, but I would say that we still need to maintain certain traditions, right? We should not blindly mimic the other traditions. That's the only problem mainly we'll face. Right? If you start blindly mimicking, say, Western food, fast food, what happens? Instead of Indian traditional food, again, as I say, tradition keeps changing, but because we're mimicking fast food, we're all going in the same direction in health to like the West is going. So that is where we need to put a stop. We need to think, is this good in the long term? That's more important. Good in the long term. It is, of course, satisfying in the short term. I love my French fries. I love Pepsi or Coke or whatever it is. But will it help me in the long term? That's how we decide about our health. That's how society should decide. So let's look at one more thing, which is very interesting, which I noticed in Middle East. What is formal wear in India for office?
What is
only Western wear? Western wear.
Yeah.
Formal wear in India, right? Western wear. But if you look at here in Middle East, the formal wear in India is Western wear, but more important, it is the traditional wear. we can't actually imagine somebody coming to office in dhoti or kurta, because that's, I mean, it happens only in the diversity day or some particular cultural day, but not in a regular day, right? That's because how we started mimicking the West for no reason. In an ideal situation, we shouldn't be wearing the dark suits which are ideal for UK, where there is no sun. You need sun, so that's why you wear dark suits. But you're wearing dark suits in hot Bangalore or Chennai climate. I don't know why. I mean, that too, the suit on top, layers of clothing. An ideal situation is dhoti or kurta, where you just have nice aeration, right?
Yeah.
So we are just mimicking without thinking. Those are things we should stop. That doesn't mean that no, we should not adopt the modern things. Modern things are good to adopt always. We should adopt the best, but we should discard things which it doesn't make sense, right? That's what I would say on the adopting the modernity.
Perfect. So let's move on. BVS, I think cultural values in everyday life is the next theme, and questions are around what role do cultural values play in leadership, decision making, and ethical behavior. And secondly, how can families and communities ensure that younger generations stay connected to their cultural roots? BVS.
So before I answer that question again, let me say, what is the benefit of having cultural values for a company? Or let's talk about the negative part first. We see a lot of companies have failed, right? Enron, WorldCom, Arthur Andersen, Satyam. We have our own Ranbaxy, Kingfisher, and even 2008 crisis. It's all ultimately is lack of having proper moral values, ethical values, right? So it's not like Western values are that much different in terms of morality versus Indian values. It's just that the current society is giving much more value to one thing above all other moral values. What is that one thing? What is the single goal of a company? Okay, how do you define success in society today? If you say somebody is successful, what does that mean? It means only two things: either money or power. Right? When you say a company is successful, what does it mean? It just means it made good profit. Right? We are not measuring success in any other form. Because of that, the value of society has changed. If you look at 60s, 70s, the values of society was totally different. Like a person makes a lot of money, but the person is found to be morally corrupt, found to be, say, fraudster. The society used to actually kind of keep them away, like cancel culture today, in a way, but not as fast as cancel culture. Cancel culture is just takes decision on one thing, but the society then used to take time, decide, but then if they find somebody not worth it, they used to keep them away. Like, for example, people used to refuse to work in their families, with them. So they used to put them at a little bit of difficulty. So there was social scorn. People don't like it, right? So when society looks at you, they give more value to your moral values, ethical values, that helps, right? But today, if you look at the companies, most of them are only striving for one thing, which is money. It's not like, people are not trying other side. Like, I'll give an example. So a lot of companies today are looking at something called conduct risk. Conduct risk is nothing but how do we behave within the company with the customers? How is our conduct? Like, is there moral values, ethical values, etc., so that we can build long-term relationships. So we have something called brand value. How does brand value come? Brand value comes because we have built a trust, and the trust is based on integrity. Whatever we are giving, the service or the product, is people are trusting it because it is consistent, is the same thing, and it is of high quality. So that is exactly what builds a trust, correct? And if we are unethical, then we start actually cutting down on those, the quality of the goods. People will not come to us. The same thing internally. Like, if you don't have consistent behavior, which is based on moral values, ethical values within the teams, within the company, then there will be friction. There will be people leaving the company, and that's that will result in a lot of losses, right? So ultimately, companies are looking at conduct risk. Conduct risk actually helps companies to live longer. If you look at any long-term company, like, which live for 100 years, 200 years, banks, you take the banks particularly for it, they survive because they had certain moral codes. They did not do things which will endanger their, longevity. Um, when they cut corners, of course, regulator comes in. But doing things just for regulator will not help. It is just the culture of the company, and the culture of the company is what actually helps on all, longevity. Going back to the leadership itself, as I was telling, so if I am brought up with certain moral values, just not from the family but from the society, what the society values. The society values integrity. Society values what do you call social responsibility. Society values fairness, compassion. So obviously, my leadership style will be the same. But if I am brought up with money first, nothing else, only my self-interest, so then automatically my in the team I do the same thing, right? But actually, I would say one thing: can the leader be somebody who is different from the society? Say, for example, entire society wants money. Our shareholders in a company want money, and money is their only goal. They don't care about how you earn the money. What will happen to the company's culture? Automatically, the company's culture promote those leaders who look at such self-interest. There may be leaders who are, ethically, morally right, who want to be more socially responsible, fair, environmentally responsible, looking at ESG values. But right now, America doesn't value them. Say the stock prices don't go up because of the ESG. The US, because of, say, the whatever the current political scenario, it doesn't value them, right? Reason that who is good go up in the corporate ladder. The same thing happens with the political leaders. We elect somebody who is a reflection of the society, and we call them corrupt, but ultimately it is social reflection, right? So if you want a leader to be good, the social change must happen, which means the cultural value of society must change, right? So
great points, BVS. Moving to the last theme in terms of the role of education in preserving and evolving culture. A couple of questions here around how can formal education systems integrate cultural learning beyond just history lessons, and with the rise of digital learning and globalization, how can we ensure that cultural identity remains strong while adapting to change?
Interesting question. We're talking about younger generation, but I'm not sure the current generation is connected to cultural roots. Many of us. Luckily, some of us, like we studied in Puttaparthi, we have different kind of roots. Some of us have some kind of roots, but how many of us, if you look at anybody, just ask generally, how many of us actually know anything about, say, even stories like Ramayana and Mahabharata, which is integral to India? How many of us understand concepts like karma, which is like the basis of Indian value? Indian values, if we look at them, they are like, they are, you can just count them or a few, like truth, non-violence, dharma, karma, and rebirth. Strangely, if you look at rebirth in Indian movies and Indian stories, which are read across the religions, it's not just the Hindus who read it, like who believe in it. People just say it. While if we are talking to socially, people just say next birth, as if it's like, they believe in it. Every religion just it comes out with that. That's because the Indian culture is rooted in that, like, rebirth. But how does rebirth help, by the way? Just a little aside. When you think of rebirth versus one birth, the way you look at life is long term versus short term. When you think you can live for longer term, like you can live again and again, you are more relaxed. You're not like, I need to do everything now. You're not tensed. You don't want to achieve all the material pleasures one shot, which means you don't want to make so much money. You're just happy with what you have. You try, but you're happy with what you have. Versus when you look at short term, you want everything now. You want to make profit now. So that's the value, right? So all these values I don't see a lot of people having them right now. I don't think they're even connected to much of it. So I don't see how the younger generation can be influenced by them. So the first thing I think is we should learn. We should learn all these things before we think the younger generation should be learning it. So if we want our children to learn, say, for example, Veda, I mean, just giving a random example here, but we need to first learn why will they learn something what that we don't know? If you don't see value in it, why will they see value? Say, for example, yoga, right? Yoga is valuable, but we don't want to learn. We want our children to learn, or even traditional music, right? So that value we should show, first do and then tell. First show the pride. At least even if you can't do everything, you can't do everything, you can't learn everything, right? But you can have the pride in it. You can listen to it. You can, if you are watching at home, for example, traditional dances, that actually influences the children around. As a child, I was taken to a lot of theater. I was taken to a lot of dance and dramas. Even in Puttaparthi, thanks to Swami, we had so many of those traditional, plays and all that. So I was exposed to that, and I saw the pride he had in it, and I was influenced by him. Right. So same thing happens with our children. The first thing is we should do it and then tell. Right. Second is learn the stories and tell the stories. If you can't learn the stories, guide the people to children to other stories, like other channels. Like, for example, nowadays there are a lot of channels, digital channels, where you can learn about Indian history, learn about Indian traditions, and there are a lot of them. Actually, recently they were even awarded by Prime Minister Modi, some of them, which actually promote Indian culture, right? So those are the ones which we should be following to, get more of these cultural values, right? And more importantly, you first stop believing in money as the only value. Of course, money is important, but that's not the only value. The other values in life, right? That's when children see and say, okay, this is more important. Like, for example, I still remember the first time ever as a child, I told a lie. I had a hard slap from my mom. I still can feel it. Very hard slap. And it was, the story is for some other day, but then I never forgot that. I never forget that. I saw the pain in her eyes up more than the slap which I had, right? And I realized that's wrong. And that stays with us. And that's how exactly we should be doing. First we do and then tell. Okay. Coming to the digital learning and globalization, see, the globalization is more like modernity. It's bringing modernity. We just don't mimic it. We absorb what is good. We think and absorb. But on the digital learning side, it is really beneficial because now we have nuclear families. We don't have grandparents to tell stories. Recently, I think a year or two back, I have seen a beautiful channel in Telugu where a lady is she looks like like a parent, and she tells stories to children. And they're interesting stories, which are traditional stories, folk stories, and the stories which will instill the moral values, the culture of India. The values like, again, karma, dharma, satya, and non-violence, and things like that, right? So that's very interesting. That's a very good channel by itself. So there are many more people who should become. In fact, I was thinking I should be getting into that space. I did not have time, but my idea was to actually bring in stories which are like Vikramaditya, Kada Saritsagara, which are the oldest stories. Kada Saritsagara is the oldest anthology of stories in the world, right? It is from Bruhat Kada. So these are the kind of stories we should bring, or at least encourage. Like, just look at the most famous movie like Bahubali. It was based on Kajal's lives of hero and heroine, which are like from kings and princes, right? If you pick up the stories which I'm talking about, there are hundreds of those. You have mega blockbuster movies, if not series. And I would say a series because it's very long stories, really. So you need really long term. But what if somebody can make that kind of stories and put them on the OTT? And what if somebody can actually, I wanted to actually use, say, cartoon as a medium for this and put that on, say, YouTube or other social media. So that will help people to really, hold the cultural identity, understand, believe in the cultural identity. That's more important. The self-confidence we should have that, this is the culture from which I came. It is beneficial for the world, and it's not better than the others, but it is definitely good for me. It is definitely equal to others. That's what we need to know, right? Um, that apart, I think we can also encourage, if you look at the education itself, the formal education, there's a bit of a difficulty in formal education, right? As I was telling, first thing you should learn at school. But second thing is, sorry, in a formal education, first thing, as I was telling, is school is the first, home is the first school. So how do we learn at home? We look at parents, we look at people around and learn. But the second thing is, in the formal education itself, how do we integrate it? If you want to integrate, you can build syllabus, but syllabus is not sufficient. You need to train the trainers, you need to train the teachers. Do the teachers believe in these values? Do the teachers believe in these morals, ethics? So only when they believe and they teach, that's when people will learn. This is not like history or geography where you don't believe anything, you can just teach facts. This is not facts, these are beliefs, these are feelings, right? So that is what should happen. Second is, the formal education should have stories about our heroes, about our traditions. Like when I was a kid, there are stories about festivals. There are stories about one person I still remember, never forget, is Kodi Ramamurthy. He is a wrestler who was a famous, world famous wrestler, and more than a wrestler, he was a person who was a strong person who was doing a lot of stunts. He was even awarded by King George V or something like that. But the important part of the whole story is that he was a vegetarian, and that is something I never forget. Like if somebody like questions me, like, how can vegetarians be strong? I'm like, there was a person who was world famous. How can you question vegetarianism? That doesn't make sense. Like you say that this nutrition is not there, that vitamin is not there, but then how? How did this happen in the past? Something is wrong with our nutrition theory. This is what I would come up with, like normally, right? So these are things which will emphasize the most important things, the stories which you read in books. So the books, particularly the language books, and some part of the history book should carry the heroes who lived our values, should carry the traditions, like how do we celebrate festivals, why do we do them, why do we do certain rituals. These are kind of things. So that will help us.
I think something which I wanted to add and was craving to add while you were talking about the cultural aspects of it was Bal Vikas. And I was never a Bal Vikas student, but 2011 onwards, I put my son into Bal Vikas. And then after 2014, 2016 onwards, my daughter also started going to Bal Vikas. So exactly what you spoke about in terms of the stories, the historical leaders who actually lived the values. All of these stories, plus the Vedam, plus the Stotras part of it, is actually covered beautifully by something called Balvikas, which Swami created. And even now, if you look at it across the world, wherever Sai centers are there, we definitely have Balvikas classes happening. So I think Swami made it happen, and he actually knew how the situation is or will be in the future, and came up with such a beautiful initiative, which is really thriving. Because every weekend, Sunday morning, 10 to 11 is the time for me to drop my kids there, and a lot of activities. And every month, they actually take all the kids to an old age home nearby. And my daughter and son, they sit on the lap of the grandmothers over there, and then they're so thrilled. They actually wait for these guys to come. They do a bit of bhajans, and then lunch is actually served. So, I mean, activities like this preserve culture. Have you seen anything around that in your area, BVS?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question you asked, because I live in Middle East, Bahrain. It's a small country, right? So a lot of NRIs live here, and they are disconnected from their roots. While many of them themselves, as I was telling, the current generation don't know what their roots are, they're very interested about their children to learn it. So Bal Vikas is there in Bahrain. We have other societies like Chinmay, I think they have something called Bal Vihar and other things. Very similar concepts where they teach them slokas, where they teach them stories and Veda and about Indian traditions and all that. I see I see a lot of parents who are probably not devotees of any of this one, or not part of any of these missions, right? But they take them. They drop them every weekend. They ritualistically do this. They go back and pick them up. So because there's not much of local transport here, you should understand. So one parent actually does the carpooling, picks up 4 or 5 children around, and they take turns and they do this. It feels really nice because you are seeing them. They themselves are not directly connected to the cultural roots, which is a little contrary to what I was telling, right? But I will tell you how that helps a bit. So the parent knows that they are not actually very much connected to the roots. Second thing is they're not connected to any of these missions, but they're doing this because they want the children to learn what they're missing. What it helps is it helps in a reverse direction. A lot of times these children go back and tell the parents, and the parents actually tend to learn certain things. Okay, I wouldn't say they are values, but they learn a lot of stories. They learn a lot of things which the children, parents are not aware of. That is first thing. Second thing is, in spite of all this, if the parent is not living the values, children will still tend to go back. So they need to live the values. I mean, remaining things are fine. At least the knowledge can be passed down, stories can be passed, but the values have to be lived by the parents. And many of the parents whom I see who are interested in this are people who are living those values. They sometime or other they spend time reading religious books or going to some religious functions, even once a year, twice a year, just shows that that they are still having that roots or connection somewhere. And that's I think that helps both ways. Yeah, it does. It's really useful.
Yeah, talking of connections, I think we should talk about Prema Bandhan. Lovely, something which Swami himself actually wanted all of us to come to this feet every year, Jan 1st. Whenever time permits, I love to be in the company of the alumni. And we actually met a couple of years back, and I had a really good time, BVS. The impact of Prema Bandhan, can you talk about it a bit? And we'll conclude after that.
What exactly you would like me to talk about Prema Bandhan?
It's a long... actually coming in, not long, shorter. In terms of people coming across the globe for Jan 1st, making that effort, coming together as brothers and, eating the lunch at the dining hall and speaking to all the teachers and going to our rooms where we actually study, those things evoke a lot of memories which reconnect us back to our alumni.
Right. Yeah. See, Prema Bandhan is like more like an emotion. It's not something we do, right? It's an alumni meet, but it's not typical alumni meet where we are not looking for only for our classmates. So all of them cannot or may not make it. But more importantly, it is across all the generations of classmates. So we meet together like 1960s students and 2019, 24 students, right? So you can see everybody there, all the batches. That's very interesting. The reason being that we all come for one main purpose is that, that is for Swami. But the second thing is we miss the place. We have literally lived a very important part of our life in that place. So we missed our teachers, we miss our hostel, we missed our hostel food. And that's why we actually are, in the recent times, like 3-4 years back, I think the tradition started where even the college hostel is inviting us to come for a lunch. And otherwise, even the school started a little earlier where people used to go to the school hostel and have lunch or dinner or whatever it is. So it actually brings us all back together. But if you see, our alumni is already having a particular culture which has been built over years. And that culture is passed on from step by step in the hostel living. Everybody lives in the hostel and everybody shares those same stories. Everybody shares same values, identity. So it connects us together. I mean, why I'm saying this is it's not just in the Prema Bandhan we're connected. Look outside, right? Say, for example, I was here in Bahrain and one of the alumni is a very young alumni those days, just out of the college, first job, comes for a Bahrain trip. Me and Bharat, another alumni, what do we do? We actually spend our weekends and even sometimes weekdays, evenings to take them around, show the place, make them comfortable. But why do we need to do that, right? We don't see that kind of fraternity in all kinds of, education societies. they are not the same batch. If the same batch, Ravi, you are coming, I know you very well, I'm taking you out, is different thing from somebody junior to me by 10 years, 15 years. I never saw him, but he's from the same college. Me taking him out, spending so much time is totally different, right? But why do you do that? Because we are connected. Somehow we are already connected because of that, the culture which we have been brought up. We always have similar things to talk about. That is the fun part, right? We talk about similar hostel fun stories, etc. That's very nice. Footloose, the name has changed. It has become Sambos, and this is what we learned. And now I think it might have changed once more because it was like 10 years back, it was Sambos. I don't know what it is now. So the name keep changing, but it's the same concept. Concept lives, right? The lingo changes. The jargon. And I'll tell you one funny story, Ravi. This is something which is like, off this one probably. I used to sleep a lot in college, in MBA, and everywhere. Okay, so even in this one. So what happened one day was like when I went for alumni meet, I saw somebody like this was I think 2008-9. There was an MBA student who was sitting in front of me, current student was there, right? So I was talking to him and he was like, "What's your name, brother?" I said, "BVS Prathap." "BVS Prathap? Huh? How did he recognize me? Like, what is he saying?" Like, Kishore sir said that, you used to be in trance in the class. And he meant it. He did not mean sleep. He actually meant trance. Okay. I was like, what is happening? I didn't know that I had that image in MBA. Now I remembered what happened actually. One day, Mohan Krishna sir was teaching. Mohan Krishna sir is very strict. Okay. So, but I just could not control my sleep. I was just dozing off. And there was a guy next to me. He also was dozing off. And then I was dozing off very badly. And then suddenly he saw and said, he called the guy's name and he just woke up. I was dozing badly and suddenly he called me and just woke up. Pratap. And I stood and I repeated the entire last sentence he said. Okay. Don't ask me how. That's how I used to listen. Something. Okay. There was something in my head. So I repeated entire last sentence verbatim as I did. Believe me, that's the last day anybody ever woke me up in MBA class. So I think he went back and told something which they thought that I'm in a trance and I'm actually listening. But if you ask me frankly, I don't know. I was sleeping. So I mean, that's what this particular alumni meeting taught me. Like, oh, people are still talking about me. So the tradition culture is going.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love the photos with Bharat and you. I guess a couple of years back in that dinner that we had was lovely. Unforgettable memories, BVS. So thanks a lot for your time, BVS. I think we covered 3 themes in today's podcast. One on heritage and legacy, cultural values in everyday life, and the role of education preserving evolving culture. A very unique perspective that you have, BVS, and I think the flavor is going to be loved by a lot of my audience, and especially the Parthi guys would love the last Kotu bit which you spoke about. So thanks a lot for your time, and I think I would love to really call you back again on another topic.
I really enjoy the experience. I wish we can do more of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.